Pentecostal churches and the Holy Ghost. You may be seated, Fanny. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right. And the Holy Ghost. That always sounds good. All right, good to see everyone this evening again. I want to do a quick check-in to hear from you maybe a little bit. How has this been going for you thus far? How has this been going for you thus far? Just short. Talk back to me.
I think it's been going phenomenal.
Yeah.
Last week I was able to talk about something I never talked about in
Yeah.
38 years.
Yeah.
And so, to me, that's been very liberating. You know, just keep things in the back of your head.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was married 17 years, never talk about this. And then married 17 years again, never talk about it. So, to be able to share something like that, I think
Yeah.
is very significant.
Yeah, and I've been reflecting on that as well. And you know, one of the first, and I want to hear from a few more of you, if that's okay. One of the things that we do know about secrets is that secrets hold all of us captive, like family secrets. You guys are looking at each other like, is the Holy Ghost talking now? Yes? No, but it's true, right? It's secrets hold all of us captive. And I'll tell you a quick anecdotal story. I might have told it before. It's a little boy who he got a slingshot, true Caribbean style. Got a slingshot for Christmas, and he was terrible at using it though. And as a kid, I used to use slingshots. He was terrible. And every time he tried to take down a bird or hit a tree, just couldn't, he missed every single time. Until he was so confident about his incompetence that he decided to try to hit Grandma's pet duck. And so he lined it up and let it rip. And for the first time, he connected square on with Grandma's pet duck. Well, won't you know what he did? He grabbed the pet duck, well, the remains of the duck, and threw it behind some wood chip. Well, his little sister Sally saw him. And Sally said, "Oh, you killed Grandma's duck." And so when it was dinner time, after dinner, it was time for Sally to help wash the dishes. And his name was Peter. Let's say his name was Peter. And Grandma says, "Peter, come and help me do the dishes." No, Sally, come and help me do the dishes. Sally says, "Actually, Peter is going to help you do the dishes today." And Peter says, "Oh." She said, "The dog." The next day, they got up, and again it was time for Sally to help sweep the yard. And Grandpa said, "Sally, the yard." She said, "Actually, Peter is going to help me today." And Peter was so angry, and every time he tried to say something, she said, "The dog." Until he couldn't take it any longer. And he went to Grandma. He said, Grandma, I have something to tell you." She said, "What is it, sweetheart?" She said, the dog. "I killed your dog." Grandma said, "I know." She said, "I was standing looking at it through the kitchen window. I saw all of it, but I was waiting to see how long you were going to allow Sally to hold you captive." Secrets. These little stories are so good because they just capture secrets. And one of the most dangerous things we can do to the devil is to reveal the secrets. Because the minute you release it, it no longer has the power. Yeah? He says, I'll tell them myself. You know what I'm talking about? I'll tell them myself. I'll go confess. I'll confess my sin myself. And the minute you do that, those who hold things over your head, the power that it holds. Leonard Cohen said, ring the bell that still can ring. There's no perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light comes. You have to shed light on the darkness. Arise and shine, for the light has come. So the business of liberation, and it's actually a very serious one, because the burden that you carry, that you carry, oftentimes unnecessarily so. Unnecessarily so. And some of us, we've been wired really well in the families that we grew up in. Don't tell nobody. And how many of you, well, don't raise your hand, but I'll raise my hand. How many of you grew up in a household where we don't talk about what goes on in our house? If we're starving, you don't let anybody know you're hungry. Huh? If you're fighting in there, the minute you take, it's not like these kids these days. These kids tell everybody everything. It's true. I tell all of your business. I tell all of your business. Kids used to be, they don't talk what's happening. Right? So it liberates all of us. It liberates. And it actually shows that it doesn't have the power that you thought it had. I'll tell on myself. In my line of work, every now and then when you work for, but wherever you are in public education or in governmental work, they said the consequence is oftentimes less severe when you tell on yourself. When you tell on yourself. It's best something happened, it's best you go and said, it's me. Yeah, that's right. Right? Jonah said, he went down to Nineveh. He went down into the belly of the ship. He went down into the water, and he went down into the belly of the... He says, I'm the one that's causing all this ruckus on the high seas. Others, throw me overboard. Others, what has this time been like for you? I was about to sing, oh, the silence will be broken. Yes, the question I'm asking is, for those who have been here, whether it's last week or the week before, what has this been like for you, this time together?
One of the things I like about the sessions, both the last couple of weeks and the time before, is that you have language to articulate what is happening. For many of us, we go through different situations and we show up in a certain way, and you can be labeled really easily by those around you, which can then only add to the trauma. But now you're able to understand that you're showing up in this way, but there's a reason behind it.
Yes.
And it gives you language to explain yourself and also to work through the issues within you. So that's really good.
I really appreciate that, because language actually, and I say it in many times, language becomes the vehicle, right? Language is a vehicle. It's a tool that carries us. Oh, so that's what you call that. Oh, it's not just that I'm lazy. Oh, there's something behind that. It's not just that I feel that I have to carry. I'm building out a piece of a workshop that I'm going to do in the summer across the city, and it's about the power of play. And I was talking with one of my staff about. I said I want for you to dig deeper. Dig deeper, because there's so many people, adults, who weren't given the chance to be children because they were constantly taking care of everybody else. Like when those little kids, especially little girls sometimes, and sometimes little boys too, you have to be the man for the family. A 10-year-old kid, you have to be the man. What man? No, it's true, you have to be the man. What man? You're 10 years old. You're supposed to be playing. And so now you're in this adult relationship and you feel as though you have to control everything and everybody's burdens become your burden and you have to take on everything. And you can't understand why you feel such guilt and shame when there's failure around you, because the little boy in you is still trying to fix everything. Or the little girl in you is still trying to manage everybody else and you can't do it. And so now language says, oh, okay. It's the inner child that hasn't been healed. That's what this thing is about.
Yes.
So language becomes really, really important.
And I'm glad you said that because my sister is here this morning. We had an incident and she left me a voice message telling me how I made her feel. And
Why are you always telling on your people?
because it's relevant for now. And my sister, anybody that know my sister, Evelyn, Siobhan, and Keith, they know you have to be very patient with her, right, Siobhan and Keith? So, that's what Christine said. So, she had left me a message telling me how I made her feel. And she called me after texting me 10 times saying it. So when I called her back, I said, I'm not going to respond to your message because you already told me what it is, because she likes for you to respond to her. So as I'm driving, and then it dropped in my spirit.
In your spirit.
In my spirit.
By the
that
Holy Ghost.
You've been the Holy Ghost. You've been in all those classes, and you walked away with a lot. So now you're going to let this go and respond to her the way you did. So I'm saying tonight, Evelyn, I am so sorry. Please forgive me. But it's because, like what Dr. Ball just said,
Say, and it's because.
and it's because in my family, I'm the one that everybody leans on, sits on, press on when the family is having a
moment.
Yes. So, like he said, even as a child, it would be me.
Yeah.
And so I guess today it was like a thing of, like, I'm tired of it. I'm not doing it. Even, last night when she called and asked for another family member something else, I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm setting boundaries. I'm tired. I'm upset. I'm not doing it. And she was like, oh, you getting so angry. I said, I'm not angry. I'm just setting boundaries for myself because it has to stop and blah, 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 blah. So this stemmed from last night. So today, when she expressed to me how she felt, I was just very snappy and I was like, I'm just like done. Just leave me alone. But then, I thought about it. So I'm asking for forgiveness. Tonight, Evelyn, I did not mean to snap at you, but it's like I'm getting older now, and I'm tired of carrying the weight of being the voice, the peacemaker, the one that mends everything together, the ones that make sense, because this one don't understand this one, and I'm making sense for everybody, but it's, it was driving me crazy. Now I'm just setting boundaries that it's your problem, do what you want, you decide how you want to do it. If you ask me, I'm going to give you my advice and tell you you don't have to use it, but don't keep calling me with the shenanigans.
So I would say I accept your apology.
There's one here.
I want to say I accept your apology and I do forgive you. But let me tell you how the flesh was working after the text message and the phone call. I said, you know what? I'm just not going to call her anymore. I'm just going to leave it.
Yep.
If she called me, I'm just might reject her calls.
Yep.
Or I might see the phone ringing
Yep.
and walk away.
Yep.
Because she said, well, I'm not going to respond to your message. I heard it. But I was waiting for a response,
yeah.
after I gave how I felt.
Yeah.
So she was like, well, I'm not going to respond. I said, okay, well, I just won't call anymore.
Yes. And you've been sisters for how long? No, I want to know. You've been sisters for how long?
Since birth.
Yes, and at this age, you're not gonna call her anymore.
No,
That-
that was a thought because.
But hold on a second. And you've been sisters for how long?
Since birth, but she ended
No,
up
hold
calling
on a
me.
second. And you're gonna set boundaries now? No,
Okay.
I'm just curious. Now back over to you.
I was in the flesh, I was angry, I was in myself, I was in my feelings, and I said, no, I'm not gonna call. If I see the phone ring, I'm not gonna answer it because she didn't respond to the way I felt. And I think I gave out my heart the way I felt, so I'm being
Yep.
honest.
Yep.
And the way you felt, it was in your heart. So, but I'm glad I came tonight because I wasn't. And when forgiveness and when you apologize, I do accept your apology. So all that other stuff went out the window. I forgive you.
And even if you guys weren't having this conversation now, and let's say it's tomorrow, and you know, somebody left somebody unread, I don't know who, but let's say one of you leave someone unread, and you haven't responded, and you're not going to call her no more, and you're not going to really listen to what she says when when she's expressing herself, right? Because you're just being stubborn, and so. But what if either of you have a need? And you reach out, the thing that happened the day before, would that get in the way?
No.
What would you do?
Because I would have been the one, because I'm the one in the family that calls and checks on
But
everybody.
it so happened that today it was you that's in trouble.
Right, but.
What
but
would
I
you
would've-
do?
I would have called her, I would have called her.
You would have called
I
her,
would've
and
ended
what?
up calling her.
Even if it was a situation, I would have still called her. I wouldn't
Yeah,
care
one thing
about
we do at the end,
not
we
calling
come together.
in my feelings. I'm not gonna call no more. If I see her number come up, I will still, all of that will go out the
You
window.
drop it and you run.
Exactly.
Yep.
I know. I know.
But Dr. Ball, her, and I always tell them this, her and a brother, they want you to stop what you're doing and take care of what they need.
Good.
And their emergency, thank you, Bishop, is not my emergency. But they actually want you to stop, freeze, and take care of their needs. And I can't do
Are
that.
you big sister?
No,
No,
my other sister
my-
that come.
I really wish my other sister was here today.
What is this, family therapy?
No, I really wish she was here today, but I'm not gonna get into that because she's not here. But when I saw forgiveness, I say, wow, I wish Michelle was here
Well,
today.
we're going to talk about it.
And I'm not the oldest. I'm not the
No,
oldest.
she's not the oldest. I'm the second oldest. Michelle is the first.
Okay. The larger point that I wanted to make here is that, and actually this allows me to say something, because I think that sometimes we mistake some of those bickerings as instability and all of that. All healthy families fight. True? All healthy, because all of you have roles and responsibilities in your family. When I teach, there's a week that I teach about family roles, from the hero to the mascot to the clown, right? To the black sheep. I hate that term in the family. Like, we all take on different roles, and sometimes those roles rotate. Sometimes you are the one who is, on the outside, and then you're on the inside. You're the one that's always needing something, and then all of a sudden everyone needs something. So those roles shift. But the larger point is that it's actually not just the issues that we have, but like, do we show up for each other? And do we let go of the things that bothers us in our families? Tonight what I want to do is I want to journey.
Sorry, Dr. Ball, I
Tell
wanted
me.
to say, not with Leslie, but I'm a person that always forgive, right? And if someone does something to me and they are wrong, it's like God would tell me to go and say sorry to them. But they the one is wrong. And God used to deal with me. I said, Lord, but they're wrong. They did something to me. Why do I have to go and say, I'm sorry if I did anything wrong, but they would not apologize?
Yeah.
What is that?
What is that? Well, I think it could be a number of things, right? And one of the things that could be is that the anxiety that you get from being at odds with someone else. How many of you here hate when you're fighting with somebody? Like, it just tear you apart. You will move mountain just to, like, you will push up next to the person, you'll play with them, you do all kinds of, you'll bring them gifts, you'll stretch your foot over in the night and touch them while they're sleeping, like you do all kinds of stuff, because, why? Because you don't want to feel it feels awful and empty and lonely and isolating and guilty and shaming when you're on the outside. And so some of us will do all kinds of stuff just to resolve, just to make things better, even when we weren't at fault. Even when we weren't at fault, is what my mother used to say. Sometimes you have to give up rights for peace sake. And the worst thing, superficially, a person may say, that's good, you cry peace. But there is actually a flip side to that. If you are constantly trying to reconcile, even when the other person is wrong, it gives them an escape. So now they don't have to really take responsibility for their side of their behaviors. Why? Because you bail them out. You enable them, right? You bail them out. And they know that you're going to bail them out. They know that you can't stand being, the little tension, because you want to be loved. You want that middle wall of partition to. My brother, I don't know if I saw your hand up. Yeah, and sometimes you have to learn to sit with the discomfort. You have to learn to sit with it. And you didn't do anything. Now you should be in a space to receive them when they come, or at least tell them that, that wasn't okay. That hurt my feelings. That wasn't good. But still be in a position of reconciliation, but being okay with waiting for them to do the right thing, because then we enable people to sometimes continue with their bad behaviors. Yes.
Yeah, just, I guess it would be a question. Not trying to get in between our two sisters here.
I don't want to go back there again.
But what I noticed was, first, is it possible in large families, like they have, is it possible that the child is still hidden because, for example, even though she's not the oldest, she's still at a take charge situation going on? So as the other children look on, I'm sure there's certain times when they didn't want to listen to her. They didn't want to do what she said, but she was given that position. Mm-hmm. And they had to fall in line. And I would say, would it be possible that now as they're adults, there's still hidden resentment going on? Because I noticed when you were talking and you were saying you were not referring to her, you were still pointing at her as you gave your example. So I was wondering if there is something that, can be festering within us that we don't even recognize.
Possibly, but possibly. And I think that the only thing I will say again is that I think, family have dynamics. Like my siblings, when we get together, it's like my wife and I laugh and talk about it. I'm the youngest of 6 children. But I have a particular position in my family. And so we get together and my siblings, my brother will start picking at each other and then at my sister, and eventually it starts going, start going south. And I usually say, okay, all right. You know what I'm talking about? He says, okay, leave him alone. Just leave him alone. And that usually is enough to sort of, cut it. And so those dynamics, we travel with those dynamics. If you could go to the next slide for me, please. And I'll go. So forgiveness is a choice. It's a choice that we make. We choose. We might not have been able to influence or decide on what was done to us as children, as adults, but it's a choice we make. Not just for them, but a choice we make for us. And I've said this before, that love and hate lives in very similar quarters. It's hard for people to understand that. But love and hate, they live in the same, they live in the same division. They live in the same apartment complex. They live in the same house. One just may be on the first floor and the other is in the basement. And the reason why I say that is because in thinking about forgiveness, love requires your everything. True or false? Yes, love requires this kind of full-on, toss everything in. I am here, I'm present, I am with you, I love you, I will fight for you, I will invest in you, I will go to the ends of the earth for you, I will sacrifice for you. Hate does the same thing. Hate really requires your full attention. Nobody says they hate somebody and just like, whatever. It requires a kind of intense energy, passion. You burn. Have you ever, like, some of you are really angry with someone? Think about how much energy you burn. Think about how you're thinking, when I meet them, when I see them, I'm going to tell them piece of my mind. I'm going to tell them this. I can't wait to see them. They're carrying on like that. But God is going to deal with them. He's going to knock them down, right? They think they're high now, but you just wait. Every mountain shall be what? Yes. And I'm the valley, and every valley shall be exalted. You just watch and see God. God is going to take them down. That's right. Get them, Jesus. Get them. You think that you can hate somebody and just not burn energy? No. It consumes you. Like the way Saul was consumed in trying to get David. Yes. Every minute of the day you spend plotting. Forgiveness is a choice that you make, that you're no longer going to invest your mental, emotional energy in paying people attention. At least a negative one. Forgiveness is a process. I want to say that again. For most people, forgiveness is a process. It's a journey that you walk. And forgiveness is connected with, oftentimes, especially if those relationships continue, forgiveness is connected to a change in behaviors. It's not a smart thing to forgive people who continue to do the same thing. That doesn't make sense. Or at least you could forgive them, but somebody have to do something differently. You can't do the same thing and get the same hurt and injury over and over again. After a while, you are doing that to yourself. You have to be able to say, I love you, but. We can't do this. I respect you, but we can't do this. And there's a kind of Christianity that is taught that allow people to keep abusing you. Don't do it. That is unhealthy. Imagine if you have a daughter or a son or a sister or a brother or a niece or a nephew or anybody that you love. Would you send them back in the lion's den? No. So when you talk about forgiveness, it's a space where there's speaking and listening, sorry, apology accepted, change in behavior, right? Turning away from your wicked ways. But it's also a process. And sometimes people want you to forgive them like that. You got to watch them sideways. You want the evidence. And so relationships are restored when we see the evidence in front of us. We see that the person is doing the right thing. Right? You have to be able to do the right thing. And so the process. And that's why in relationships, and I do a lot of couples counseling, I don't spend a whole lot of time and saying, someone says, you forgive me? You forgive me? You didn't say I forgive you. You forgive me? And then they get mad at you because you didn't say I forgive. No, I'm not ready yet. And it's not that I'm not ready yet. The behaviors should go in front. I don't know if that makes sense. Forgiveness is also not always easy, because if there's trauma upon top of trauma or bad behaviors upon top of bad behaviors, it's hard for you just to say, I let it go. And because you're feeling good about being sorry doesn't mean I have to feel good about being in a forgiving mode. Forgiveness is also freedom. Forgiveness is peace. It's peace of mind. Next slide, please. As we think towards forgiveness, we think about inner peace. We think about better relationships. And about when the conditions are met. We forgive out of love, sometimes out of duty. And love and duty oftentimes go together. Hopefully at their best, there's no duty without love, and there's no love without duty. That sounds like poetry. Huh? They live in the same space, sometimes for the sake of others and for your own growth and development. Next slide. What forgiveness is not? Forgiveness is not, I'm sorry, I have to do it, my love. I come to it. Forgiveness is not weakness. Yeah? It's not weakness. Don't you notice that sometimes when you're forgiving a person, you feel as though you're losing? You know, when you forgive, you lose something. You lose the right to remain in rage. And some of us love to hold on to the rage. God, it feels good. I'm mad, and I'm staying mad for 2 years. How many of you tell the truth and shame the devil? How many of you could stay mad for a long time? Nobody here? Please go call the other people for me. Sometimes to forgive, it feels like you're losing something. Forgiveness is not forgetting what happened. People want you to forget. How can you forget? It's dangerous. You know what I'm saying? It's dangerous to forget what's been done to you. Because then how do you prepare for the future? You can't forget it. Now, you know that you haven't forgiven when you keep bringing the same thing over and over again. You know that there's still unresolved issues. Forgiveness is not relieving the person of responsibilities. So people still have to face the consequences of what they've done. My wife and I are laughing because it's one of those smart computers that did this deck. And that word relieving there, they put a dog there. It's not saying that you instantly trust a person again. Next slide, please. Let's relieve that. And I'm going to give you guys these slides. I want you to have them, right? I want you to have them and to go back and process them so our colleagues could. So in terms of when we think about the inner child that is wounded, it shows up in ways of self-sabotaging and destructive behaviors, addictions, distractions, procrastinations, a deep sense of brokenness and unworthiness. I'm bad. I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. You know what it feels like for a person to believe that they're not lovable? I've seen it. There's a deep sense of hunger and yearning for acceptance. On the job, in family systems, in social gathering, constantly seeking affirmation. Is this good enough? Am I good enough? And that That is painful, isn't it? And knowing that you're created in the image of God, and knowing that you're created in the imago Dei, in the image and in the likeness of God. And here you are, because of what people have done to you and where you've been and the struggles that you've experienced and the abuse and the neglect and the shaming and all of those things. Here we are going through the world thinking that we are unworthy. When you are created in the image of God, and the problem is that we define ourselves by our experiences rather than by our essence as to who we are. Are you following what I'm saying? The things that has been done to us define us, and that's not good. Because whether you have been through the mud or you've had a relatively, easy life or without all of the complications, the person who's been through more or less, inherently you're no more valuable or less valuable. No one person can be more valuable or less valuable than the other person in the sight of God. You follow me? In the sight of God, no one can reach above or below in the sight. I'm talking about your raw materials. I'm talking about when God got down on his knees and he took that lump of clay and he pushed and he turned and then he breathed into it. And it became a living soul. That living soul there, with position and title and education and socioeconomics and gender and all of those things and the country of your birth and the parents of your birth, all of those things, we feel as though it keeps adding more values. But in the sight of God, or if you're a beautiful singer or a great preacher or an amazing musician, those are the things that people value. That's not the things that God values the most. God actually valued the most your very essence. Hallelujah. He values your essence. And we've come to define ourselves by what we do rather than who we are. And what we do fades away. At some point, the doctor stopped doctoring. At some point, the lawyer stops lawyering. At some point, the singer stops singing. You see what I'm saying? And what is left? And what is left? Your essence, your soul, the person that is created in the image of God. And that's what God is after. And we can strip away all of those things. What Jesus said about the Pharisees and the scribe and all these people and the Sadducees, they're like this. Outside, they're like this. And they talk like this, and they swing like this, and they think they're important, but inside they're like bones. They're empty. Remember, like Naaman who had leprosy. He had leprosy, and they said he was a great general, but he had leprosy. He was a leper. So he had all of these things, but he had leprosy still. And I love the way scripture is written. And then there was a little girl. Yeah, a little slave girl, no name, right? Who was a captive. And she whispered to the woman of the house, would to God that he goes down and see the prophet. That's it. You see her essence? Even though she was a little slave girl, she knew God and she had the power to change the course of history. God was with her. And here was a general who had all of those things. He had more than leprosy, actually. He had pride. And so the wounded inner child is afraid of abandonment and rejection. And so when you hear no, you take it personally. Someone tells us no, We can't have this. It's like a dagger to our hearts. A deep sense of abandonment. Someone tells us we can't have that position in church. It's time to give it up. We're non-functional, but we're still holding on to it. It's only in title, but not in deed. And we're afraid to release it because what are they going to call me? I'll call you a son of God or a daughter of God just the same way. Because that's who you were anyway. Am I talking right here? Abandonment. When we suffer from abandonment, we hold on to people who should go. Go back to the first slide for me, my sister. The very first one. The very first one. It's actually one of my favorite, has become one of my favorite images. Are you guys familiar with that image? It's a British painter, artist. His name is Banksy, Bansky. Banksy, and this is one of his paintings. He does lots of in urban community, he paints all kinds of stuff and just leave them there. But it's a little girl holding a balloon. We call it hope. The balloon is beyond her grasp, but she still reaches for it, taking to the night sky, but she's still reaching for it. And sometimes we're losing things and we're losing people, and we're so wounded by those experiences that we cannot reset and restart and move forward because of a deep sense of abandonment. And abandonment is ultimately associated with, I did something wrong. They left because I did something wrong. They left because I wasn't good enough. My father wasn't in my life because I wasn't good enough. I did something wrong. No. Daddy, that wasn't your responsibility to make him stay or make him go. That was his responsibility. There's nothing you could have done. You couldn't have been, it doesn't matter how perfect you were, it doesn't matter how ruckus and bad you were, they were going to stay because it was their duty to stay, and they were going to leave because of their own struggles. And it was never your fault. Your family didn't have enough money, it had nothing to do with you. And oh, sometimes we blame ourselves for that. Oh, give her the mic. She has something good to say. Give her the mic. Where's the mic? Yes.
Yeah, sometimes the parents do talk to the kids or blame the kids. They'll say, it's because of you that I couldn't go to school, or I had to work all these hours, so I couldn't advance myself, and blah, blah, blah.
If I didn't have you.
If I didn't have you, I would have been so much further along. So parents do put that in children's minds.
You're
as
just
well.
like your, jeez, your generation them.
Yeah.
Dropping some wisdom on us here tonight.
Or if their bodies, mothers have said this, if I didn't have you, I wouldn't be,
Yes,
my body wouldn't look like this.
yes, I would be looking like, put stuff.
Some of them didn't have the body in the
Oh,
first.
stop it. Jeez, I'm peace. That's what she said. And so we put stuff on folks, and we carry other people's cross and their burdens and their words. Low self-esteem and lack of self-love, lack of boundaries. You could go back. I appreciate that, my sister. The integrated adult. We learn to love ourselves. We take care of ourselves. Set boundaries with others. We know when to say no without feeling shame. express emotions and needs in an empowered, honest, assertive way, walk our truth, and we have what? Compassion for the inner child. I like that. We have compassion for be kind to the little girl inside of you. Be kind to the little boy inside of you. Be kind knowing that, man, it was tough for you. Yes, be kind to them. Don't be so mean to them.
Dr. Bo, can you describe what it means to have compassion to inner child?
Yes.
What does that look like for an adult?
It looks like many things. A couple of things I would say. It looks like one of the things is not blaming yourself for what happened to you. Right? Like where the experiences that you've had wasn't your fault, and have compassion on that child. Say, like we talk about the little boy in you, you turn out all right. They tell lies on you, but you turn out all right. They didn't like you, but God loved you. Right? It's to be kind to them. Ultimately, the Joseph experience, and I'll talk a little bit about that, is the meaning making. Compassion to the inner child is, I want for you to stop just for a second, and I want for you to think about what the chattering that's constantly in the back of your head about you. I want you to think about the negative yappering, chatting, conversation, monologue that drums on and on in the back of your head about you. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. What are the chatterings that drives on? And it didn't just start yesterday. It's like the longest running series in the history of the world. You know, like what's a long running TV series? I don't watch TV, so. Huh? One of them, General Hospital, The Young and the Restless, we'll take that. Days of Our Lives, yes, as the world turned. Jeez. That's right. The longest running series that hasn't stopped us yet. The lights are off, but it keeps going. The commercial is no longer running, but it's still running. Nobody's watching, but it's still running. Anyone would like to share? What is that? What runs on in the back of your head? Yes, my brother. What an amazing group here.
What constantly run on in my mind is my mom telling me that I am not her son. And it takes something from me. And actually, all my life, I was yearning for her love. Because I never hear she said, I love you. All I get is whipping, whipping on top of whipping. Don't know why I'm getting whipping, but getting it.
Yeah.
And at the age of 35, I said, you know what? I never get it all this time. I ain't going to get it again. Forget it. And at that time, she said, I am not her son. She just make it worse. Other thing is, I bought a house, and I started to do some repair, and she come there, and I started show her what I'm going to do and so forth. And all she could say to me is, boy, mind you break down the house. So all those things, why?
Yeah.
The big question is, why?
What was happening at 35? Something changed for you at 35. You said
Yeah, I said I'm not looking for her love no more.
Yeah.
No more because I never get it all my life. So I'm not going to get it no more. So I stopped. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to start to live my life.
Yes.
The good thing is that all my life while I was growing up and I'm not getting their love, my thing was like, God, help me that I have a place that when they get old, they can rest, they can come and rest. That was in my mind.
And so that house,
And that house,
yes,
that was a part of the house. That was the house.
that house represented sort of you helping them,
Yes.
even though you didn't get what you needed.
Correct.
And that providence is part of the healing, that the journey that you use as a healing journey.
Yes.
Yeah. To do right by them, even if they didn't do right by you.
Even though.
And I want to let you know that there's nothing you could have done to have deserved all of that beating. That level of abuse has nothing to do with how good or how bad you are as a child. It has to do with the cruelty of the person who is doing it. And that's not on you. And there's nothing you could have done or not have done to have gotten the love that you shouldn't have to fight for. You shouldn't have to build a house to get love. You shouldn't have to ask for love. You shouldn't have to beg for it. You shouldn't have to prove it. By virtue of who you are in a family system, it should be freely granted, especially during difficult times, especially in times when you failed. And so there's nothing you could have done to have deserved, to have not gotten it. Or, let me phrase that properly. So there's no more work you could have done that caused someone to stand up and says, now we're going to give it to you. Right? Those of us, is there anybody here who is a parent that when your kid was like, like they were terrible, you loved them still, didn't you? Yes. And maybe they got locked up, and what do? You show up for them. And when there's a court date, what do? You show up for them. Yes. And when they get let out, you show up for them. Like someone talk about graduation. Even if you had graduated with a GED 2 years later than you were supposed to, 3 years later than you're supposed to, guess what? Somebody should be all the way in the back. Hey, that's my boy! Just like that. My daughter is graduating. Our daughter is graduating. Our daughter is graduating on Friday. And we're loading up. And we're going to go down there. And when our son graduated a year ago from his undergrad, we were all the way up in the nosebleed section. And it was a huge graduation. I think they did 2 graduations in one, right, because of COVID and so whatever it is. And there was a man sitting up behind me. You know what they brought to the graduation? They brought a cowbell. It was so loud. I said to him, I'll tell you when my son is crossing the stage. I mean, that thing was so loud. I said, you're going to do it for me too? He said, he's a Latinx brother. He said, yeah, man, I got you. And then when it was Jonathan's turn, I said, that's him. Yes. Yes, that's what we do. The business of rejoicing with those who rejoice and what? Weep with those that weep. We show up. That's what we do. That's what we do. And once again, we mistake the cruelty and the absence and the neglect, sometimes because of their own trauma. And we internalize it and say, it is because of me why they treated me the way they did. And that's double injury. Not only have they injured you, but now you're blaming yourself for the injury that you've gotten. So now you blame yourself. So you can't win. And so I love the 35 on Alive. Yes, 35 I'm saying. And that's a hard and yet a liberating place to get to. It's not coming. Do you know how courageous that is? Do you know how much courage that's required? For you to say, it's not coming. I'm going to do good. I'm going to do right. But I'm no longer going to stand waiting for it because it's not coming. That's powerful. We'll pause there. Any thoughts? Thank you for sharing, my brother.
So, Dr. Bud, I was thinking, especially parents coming from the islands.
Yeah.
I can only speak, not I can only speak, but I'm speaking of that. A lot of them never got that in the first place.
Yes.
Right? So they never, actually, my first wife taught me how to say I love you. She would
Yes.
say, I love you.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes. That's,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
like,
Yeah, me love your bad man.
and it took a while, and now I can just say, God bless your family, love you.
Yes.
But that started, and even like Maya, I mean, she's just a precious soul. There's not one, she does not get up without coming to me, say, good morning, Dad, I love you. She'll say, I love you like 7 different times. It's like, love you. And she'll hear me, she'll open the door like,
Hello.
okay.
Yeah.
So what I realize is that as I've grown up, I look back at my parents or just family members, I realize you couldn't do any better. If you think about our parents and grandparents, only 3 generations from slavery. So that's all they knew was to work hard.
Yes.
And that's how they showed their love, by working hard and giving you a better life.
Because loving you, that didn't save you.
They didn't have that.
When you're in the balance of life and death and starvation, hard work is what saved you. But go ahead, I want you to finish.
And then I'm thinking about, for example, both my grandmothers, back that generation had like 12, 13 children.
Yeah.
There was no time for anybody to be loved. They had to. No, and then we didn't have washing machine. We didn't have, you didn't have power. You had to wash in that bucket and go, So there was no time for it. So when I look at my parents, I look at what they came from. And then I better understand. Sometimes you can understand your parents by looking at your grandparents and say, well, they didn't have it to give to them.
Yeah.
And they had 13 children, and they had to feed these children and believe God. You hear all these stories about, the mother put the pot on the stove, and, somebody
Wait for
showed up with a
somebody
half
from-
a goat,
yeah. One bridge too far. It was not half a goat. Maybe some rice, not a half a goat. That's right. So yes, because it was a survival time for them. It was a survival mechanism. And that's why so many of us, including our fathers showed us that they love us by giving us stuff. And then we climb the socioeconomic ladder. And we are trying to bring stuff to our kids. But you can't, because you've always given them stuff already. And so there's nothing precious for them because they've always had everything. And now they're saying, but I want you. I want you. I want you to tell me. I want you to say it. Like you, my wife is the one who, I told it here before, I'm leaving for work in the morning, or she's leaving, and she's like hanging on to my neck and telling me, I'm like, I'm coming back. And then I come home and she's hanging on to my neck as though I've been in prison and they just released me for like 15 years. And I'm thinking, this is weird. I just saw you this morning and I spoke to you several times. And then I'll come to you, Sister Leslie. And then I said, oh, what is this? And then I had no choice but to get used to it. And then it's like magnet. She's leaving and I start doing it too. I'm like, this is a weird family now. And then we had these kids and they come around and I walk in the house and my son, who's big and brolic, he says, Dad Ball. And he comes and he bear hugs me. In fact, just today, right? Like in the bedroom, he came and my back is it. I don't know what I did to my back. So I'm like, I'm hobbling a little bit tonight. And he came and he gave me one of those. I said, oh! He said, what's wrong with you? But it's that thing. That's why, can I just tell you, like, I believe that we can redeem each other. I really believe that. I don't know if the preachers will agree with it, but I believe we redeem each other from ourselves and redeem each other from traditions. We redeem each other from culture and we redeem each other from like unhealthy ways of thinking and being. She redeemed me. She did. Your late wife redeemed you, showed you that there's a better way. There is a better way. And you're still being redeemed. Yes. And the mistake we make sometimes is we lie to ourselves and we lie to people and we tell them it's all fixed. And that's not true. I'm sorry.
No.
You go ahead, because I talked
Well,
too
I was
much.
going to ask you and Bishop a question, well, I think most people here, because I hear Caribbean people say that they parents grew up working and everything, and they didn't really say I love you. Like, we grew up in the household where everybody loved everybody and really meant it. So when we walked in, we woke up, we said good morning, we said I love you. Even today, when we see each other, we'll hug, we greet each other, we say we love you. And if we're on the phone, hang up, we say love you and stuff like that. To other people, they'll say, well, I want to be a part of your family because y'all always loving off of each other. But I hear a lot of Caribbean people say that, what you and Bishop said tonight. So my question is, how did that affect you with your children? Like did it affect you with your children? And how did it make you feel growing up, knowing that, okay, I know my parents are providing for me, but I prefer to have the love, a hug, over you working, and showing me the love instead. How did that make you feel?
I mean, do you want to take it first?
Well, one thing I want to say personally for me, I think that what's amazing for me personally, my life, is that I think everything I've strove to become was a result of what I did not see. So I never saw that type of love that I have in my home demonstrated. So I made it my business, and I said, if I ever get married, this is how I'm going to treat a woman. If I ever get married, no woman will ever come to the door, knock on it, and say that your man is with me. I learned all that before I even came to Jesus. I made those decisions that no woman must ever have anything over my wife because of what I saw. The church I came out of, the way I saw my pastor treat people, I said, I will never treat people that way. Their money will never be the most important thing. Like even this church, and Angie will tell you, we have a need, you would never know, because I'm going to figure it out somewhere or another, right? You don't hear me saying, oh, we need, I'm not going to be going after nobody's money. I don't want, I just look at how I saw things done, and I love my pastor, my former pastor that is, but I said that that's not the way people should be led. And so everything I literally became is a result of what I saw, but that should have never been.
Clap it up for the bishop. and like you, very similar for me. And the story I tell is, I have very, very, very few memories of my any interactions with my biological my father. Very, very little, very, very little. And in part, and I know why too. In part because I am the youngest one. My siblings had all kind of memories that I don't have, because my mom was out of there when I was 4 years old. And so my older siblings have memories and stories that I just don't carry. But I know the stories, you know, it's like the stories that they tell are stories that I own as well. And so the kind of husband that I was going to be, the kind of father I was going to be, I made the decision I knew the kind of father I wanted to be when I was 10 years old. When I was 15, I knew the kind of husband that I wanted to be when I was very, very young. And so sometimes we learn how to live from what we didn't have. But there is a cost that we don't often talk about, and that is, it requires a great deal of energy. It requires a great deal of energy to not to be, as opposed to by osmosis. You know what I mean? Like, this is what I've seen, and this is what I'm following. Because what wasn't there for most people, they simply absorb it and they live it out from one generation to the next generation. And then you have people like your bishop that comes along and says, you know what, I'm going to muscle all of my strength and all of my will and all of my intentions. And there he is, a kid, but shaping his future through what was awful. And another person blindly walk into the future by what was awful and simply repeat it from one generation to the next.
So I have a question around that, like, what makes, is there
I know what you're asking.
a way to explain it using science as to why you can even be in a household and two people are going through the same thing? One makes a decision to not be that way, to be different, to do everything right, and then the other person, just as you said, goes along or does worse. Like, that's a question I have. I was like, why? What happens there? Is it God said, okay, this one's gonna make it and that one's not gonna make it? Or like, what makes those two people go, like those two children take different paths?
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone, and that's a brilliant question, by the way. It's one that I think all of us have contemplated in some form or fashion. I don't think there's one answer, right? I think that there's the social learning theory factor that we talk about. Like, social learning theory is that, as someone says, what you're doing screams so loud that I can't hear what you're saying. Like, a great part of our learning is by observations and by seeing patterns and following them. Others, for whatever it's your own wiring, your own psychological makeup, the own destiny that you're called into, that you take on a very, studious, reflective inquiry approach to say, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. I cannot tell you the rage that the rage that I feel when I know that men are putting their hands on women. I cannot, I couldn't describe to you the anger that I feel. Because I think that should never happen. Absolutely. It makes me so angry that, and I have 2 daughters, God help whoever tried to do something like that and I find out about it. Because I'm not rolling up as a bishop. You know what I mean? Like, it's such an awful way to live. And yet someone else will just walk straight into that because they saw their mother being beaten by their father. So I don't know what it is, why one person, and sometimes it's not someone else there teaching you how to, sometimes it's just you and God, teaching you how to be different. And then, and to be very clear, there are many who wants to be different and tries to be different and end up replicating the very same thing that was done to them. It's the inescapable.
Dr. Ball, I think the question that Natalie asked, I think is a brilliant question.
Yes.
Because, you know, I've watched that too. People can grow up in the same house. And so I go back to my own family, right? So just growing up in the Bronx, growing up in here, I just realized that there's so much more. But it's also exposure. Because when I worked with different companies, I had to meet different clients. I remember meeting a client in Rye, and it was an empty shell of a house, and it was $50 million. And so my exposure constantly to wealth and seeing people prosper made me want to dream bigger and want more, right? And so even just the way, I'm not here to talk about me, but just the way my thought, my mind, my imagination, my vision, it's the creativity inside of me.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
It
because of
unleashes
what I've
it.
seen. And the things that I watch also, like I watch designs, architecture.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ideas and concepts and moving beyond the average. And it's not because I came from Minnesota, I grew up in some rich family. It's because of how I use my mind. And the other thing too, going back to what the question Les asked, even the very teaching that I do now, is because growing up in church and hearing like this Mickey Mouse level word, and I would say to myself, there is so much more depth to the word of God. Lord, open up the eyes of my
Yes.
understanding, because this is too shallow for me. And I've always, even coming to church, because when I was a teenager, you know, I used to watch That's Incredible, and I just got involved in moving things with my mind. It was witchcraft. I was involved in it was witchcraft. So when I got saved, I said, I cannot just be an average church guy. Like that, I just despise that. People come to church and being average. There's a part of me that despised it. It's like, God, I want the depth. If I can't get the supernatural, the prophetic, and the miracles, because you're such an amazing God that because I came from that, how could I come out of that and come to this and accept less?
Yes.
That's how I manage my thoughts.
Yes.
So go back to what she was saying. I think it's all expectation. You have people grow up in the same house. You can have another person becomes a professor, another person owns property, another person can still live at home with their parents.
Yeah.
I just think it's about what do you want out of life?
Yeah. Being driven, and keep the mic, Sister Leslie. And I was gonna just draw a straight line from here to there again. And like what you said earlier about like showing affection in your family, and someone on the outside looking in and says, I want to be a part of your family. Can you all adopt me, please? I just admire the way you, that's how people also learn to do differently. To Bishop's point, they said, oh, you mean like there's another way we could be as a family? Oh, there's another way we could manage our money? Oh, there's another way that we could invest? Oh, there's another way that we could resolve conflict without burning it down? You mean we could actually sit down and talk about it? Okay. Like, I could actually talk about it and not really try to destroy you. Now, that's new. I want to try it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it was Bishop probably can help me with this if he remember. Years ago, you had preached about that, about how two dogs can come from the same litter. I think you said something about one being a canine and...
One is in the backyard digging up the yard, and one goes to the police academy.
Right.
So the one in the backyard doesn't produce anything but trouble and become a nuisance to society. And the other one goes to police academy and sniffs out bombs and makes arrests. When he dies, he gets a parade. The other one just cremated. So you're right, but the same litter, but the different exposure. Thank you.
That's the
Somebody's
greatest
listening.
joy for any preacher. That's true. Wait, you
I just said somebody's listening.
yeah.
No, I've learned a lot since I've been here under Bishop's
How long you
leadership.
been
I
here?
just want to put that out there, people.
How long you been here?
How long? I always ask Carlisha. 13 years? Has it been Carlisha? I don't remember, but it seemed like I just was here. I always belonged here, so.
Nice,
But I
nice.
think it's 13. 2008, somebody do the math. 16 years. See, I thought it was 13, but I knew it was a long time.
Yeah.
But
You're gonna get a plaque for your 20th anniversary. How are we feeling? How much more time do I have? 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Okay. This is good stuff. I didn't even start open this thing yet. You could go to the next slide, please. You know, my wife always, I hear in the back of my head, talk about chattering in the back of my head. You over-prepare too much. You do too much. All right, next one, please. Because you don't, and especially when she helped me clean up the slides that I didn't use. I was going to give you an activity of making an appointment, but what I want for you to do, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I want to maximize the 8 minutes, the 10 minutes that I have. But I want for you to, and we'll continue this next week as we bring this home. But I want for you to maybe find a scripture on forgiveness for me. I want each of you to find a scripture on forgiveness. Oh, no, for now. Find a scripture on forgiveness. Okay.
I don't know if you're going to have time to go into this, but one of the things, going back to how we deal with church, when you're saying that forgiveness doesn't mean that you forget, is that we'll hear that you should forgive 70 times 7, and which means that every time it's fresh, it's not from before, and also referencing that, you know, God himself removes our sins as far as the east is from the west, and it's thrown into the sea of forgetfulness, and all of these things. So in church, we get this sense of like we are supposed to forget. And if we don't forget, even if you're not bringing it up, that you haven't forgiven. So how do we reconcile, or how does someone in Christendom, as we're going to the scripture, reconciles what you said around you forgive, but doesn't mean you've forgotten, when the word is giving you all of this other context?
Yeah, I agree. And in my mind, I actually don't necessarily see it as opposite or antithetical or in conflict with each other. If I should put one of you to stand here and one of you to stand here, and I think, Bishop, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Jesus was talking to the person who needs to grant forgiveness. But I want to just imagine Jesus is talking to this person because maybe they become bitter and they're not forgiving. But I want for you to turn Jesus, watch Jesus turned to the person who is doing the offense. Right? He just tell the person who is offended, who has been, need to grant forgiveness, you need to forgive. But I want you to turn him now and talk to the person who is hurting other people. What do you think he would say to that person? Do you think he would say, oh, don't worry about it. Keep up the good work of hurting people. Keep up the good work of hurting people. You know why? You're good. They're going to be forgiving you 70 times 7, so don't worry. You have a lot more where that came from. Do you think that's what Jesus? Exactly. And so when we preach it, we talk to the person who needs to grant forgiveness. But I would just invite us, turn just a little bit and look at the other person. What are you doing? That's right. And guess what? Watch this. This is how amazing it is. When this person stopped being so mean and cruel and offensive, this person's heart is free to forgive many times over. But they don't have to. You know why? Because this person over here is doing the right thing. So what we're really doing, we're talking, it's a one-sided conversation. And so that's what I think. That's what I think. That's what I think. And the problem is our back is turned to the person who is being cruel and offensive, and we say, come on, be nice, forgive, forgive. But just turn around and look at the behaviors. And if we get those folks to stop, because there's no need for forgiveness if there's no sin. Forgiveness comes in place, as Paul who says, if there was no law, there would be no sin. There's no transgression. So it's because of the wrong that's being done. So this person needs to be in a state of readiness. Can I just tell you? I'll tell you a quick story. This is a true story. It's one of the greatest moments of forgiveness that I've personally experienced. I'll tell it. My wife knows the story. I was pastoring, and some folks were leaving the church, and there was some transition taking place. And I thought, Bishop, I did everything I was supposed to do. I sat down with the folks. We came up with a plan, organized it. My heart was pure. My intentions was good. I was supportive. I did everything that I was supposed to do. And it fell apart terribly. And people were hurt. And I suffered for about 3 years. It was the worst time in ministry for me and my wife. My wife was pregnant at the time, and people were talking really bad about her. It was awful for us. I was depressed. And I just kept quiet. Until one day I just talked to the church. I said, look. And they surrounded us, and they hugged us, and they loved on us, and they said, Pastor, we got you. Some years later, some of the folks, they came to us, and they said, what's the name of the restaurant? It's the Olives? Fig and Olives. It used to be up in East Chester, right by where Lord and Taylor was. And before we even sat down, it was in the winter, before we even sat down, they threw their arms around us. And we bawled, all of us bawled. It was a couple and my wife. And we, 4 of us was just bawling. I was shocked. All of the resentment, all the hurt in that moment, it just went. I think in part because my intentions and our intentions were so pure that we were waiting for them to come. And right now we're like this. We're like this. Close. Sit down at their house and we laughing and chatting and eating till 1 o'clock in the morning. We released each other, and they admitted, they said, we were wrong. They said we shouldn't have done what we did, and we got caught up, and we're sorry. We apologize, and we forgave them. I don't know where I'm going with that story, but it was real, you know what I mean? It wasn't, oh, I'm so sorry. It was like an altar call, and we were all there together. We were all there, and we said we loved each other. 5 minutes? She's keeping time for me. Do you have your scripture? Yes. Now, I want for you to hold on to your scriptures and come and bring it next week. Because Bishop said I don't have more time. All right. I wanted to, and my battery is low too. I want to get to a couple of things. Could you just page me forward, please? Sister Carlisha, you could continue. I want to get to just a couple of slides here. Continue. We're done. Continue. Some of that we've done. Okay. If you could just go back one, please. The 4 phases of forgiveness. 1 is uncover the harm. Name what has been done. Number 2, you have to make the decision that you're going to consider forgiveness, that forgiveness is on the table. Reconciliation is on the table. and do the tough work of forgiving, letting go, not rehashing, not bringing it up. The same way the other person have to be committed to doing the right thing and discover meaning in suffering. Did you get that? Discover meaning in suffering, not the meaning of suffering. Not to say that I suffer because, but I got this out of the suffering. So we don't want everybody to go suffer so they could find meaning. You could find great meaning in suffering, outside of suffering, close to suffering, without suffering. But the thing is to find meaning in the suffering. Next slide, please. We talk about, the only point I wanted to make on these two slides is that most trauma happens in families, in relationships, next slide, and most recovery requires for them to take place in relationship as well. Look at that first quote there. Parents' words becomes their children's inner voices. The words of our parents becomes that back chattering that we take with us through life. And at some point we have to learn to disrupt that. The greatest source of our sufferings are the lies we tell ourselves. Bessel van der Kolk. The paradox of trauma is that it has both the power to destroy and the power to transform and resurrect. Peter Levine. People are afraid to heal because their entire identity is centered around the trauma they have experienced. They have no idea who they are outside of the trauma, that unknown is incredibly terrifying. Who am I outside of my trauma? Who am I outside of what they say that I am? That is incredibly terrifying. Healing doesn't mean the pain never existed. It means the damage no longer, I'll rephrase that, holds sway over our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ball, I wanted us to share a joke. Yes, let's put our hands together. And we're going to cut off our live now. Thank you all so much for watching. There's a few announcements coming up on the screen. So when you said your parents' words become your children's inner voice, so when I was a kid, my mother would say, "Uno go bien."